Like, am I just full of it? Like, do I really know what I'm doing? And it's funny how, like, it's become almost routine now for me to kind of expect that. And that's probably why I've labeled it as like a roller coaster. So I have about 10 minutes before my next coaching session, and I go up to Coach Mike and I say, "You know what I just don't understand?" And he said, "No, Matt, but I love when you bring up these random topics because you always say something super profound at the end." Well, that's not what he said, but I'm sure that's what he was thinking. And I said, "For living basically the same day every day, there's quite the emotional roller coaster that comes with it." And here we are now. Welcome to the Talking Shop podcast. I'm your host, Matt Tometz, sharing stories, lessons, and experiences in sports performance and professional development. And in this episode, I simply just want to have a coaching confession and just share the story, the experience, and the lessons that I think I got out of this of the emotional roller coaster of living the same day as a full-time coach, being an adult, and doing the thing. So, for context, what I want out of this episode, selfishly, I just want to share a real, personal, and hopefully relatable story. And I want to show more of me as a person. My podcasts and my episodes as a coach and a content creator just felt official, not corporate, but not as real. And I'd want to share just a story with you, something that I think is super relatable. So, you know, this topic has been on my mind and my heart, not to sound cliche or ironic. And I was putting this PowerPoint together and I was thinking like, what is the point of this episode? Like, yeah, I want to share the story, but like what is the real end goal? And it's not super clear as I'm still trying to figure it out myself, but all I know is that these feelings are real. I know that hopefully some of you, one of you, hopefully you, the listener, yeah, I'm talking to you, has felt this before. And this is what I want for you. I want you to feel understood and related. And hopefully, by me talking through my experiences, you get some clarity about why you might have some of these similar feelings. And just being able to put your finger on it, I think is super valuable. So we'll see where this episode takes us, but hopefully it's me letting my guard down. It's me sharing something more personal and real. And we can all get a little bit of clarity kind of at the end of this. So, but first, let's put our finger on it with some total eye roll worthy infographics or things we learned in school. And the first is the 4 stages of learning. So you start with unconscious competence. So you don't know what you don't know. You don't even know that being a performance coach is a thing. You don't even know that there's a rhyme and a reason and periodization, and you pick drills for certain reasons, and you can get someone faster, and the reasons why people get faster, et cetera, et cetera. And then as you go through this stage, then you go to conscious incompetence. Now you know that you don't know stuff. You start accumulating more experiences and just exposure to these different things. And then you get into conscious competence. So you know what you know, and it takes a lot of mental effort and focus. So, writing a program, let's say it takes you 2 hours to do. Let's say it takes you thumbing through your old textbook and whatnot. And then the last stage, stage 4, would be unconscious competence. So you know all this stuff, but you don't even have to think about it. The same program that took you 2 hours to write now takes you 30 minutes. And there's things that you can just talk about: speed training, how neural adaptations happen, et cetera, just like it's normal kind of everyday conversation. It doesn't have to be this super intentional, thought out, calculated kind of thing. It kind of just happens. And there's also the Dunning-Kruger effect. So basically, when you first get into a topic, you feel like you know everything. And that's called the peak of Mount Stupid, because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm accumulating this knowledge. It's fun and it's exciting. You basically just 1,000x'd your knowledge on a certain topic. And then the more you learn and accumulate, you get into the valley of despair, where now you're like, okay, I have a solid base and I'm realizing really how wide and broad and deep this topic is. And I only got the initial exposure, things that take coaches 20, 30 lifetimes to figure out. Well, oh my gosh, I'm just an internship in. I'm just like 1 year in. It's like, I don't know anything. How on earth could I have ever thought that I knew stuff? And then you keep going and learning and accumulating and doing the things, and then you get up the slope of enlightenment according to this graphic and the plateau of sustainability. So just these general concepts and topics that we can kind of use to put our finger on some of the feelings of the emotional roller coaster and living the same day. So I want to create some context and just share what I believe has been leading up to this these feelings and this story and kind of where I'm at currently. So unconscious incompetence year one, internship and the few summers that I was a part-time coach, just soaking everything in. I'm glad I made the team. And I remember I said, I want to be the best strength coach in the world. And one of the old coaches at TC Boost said, well, that's never going to happen. And I was kind of taken aback. And he goes, as soon as you think you're the best strength coach in the world, then that's when you stop learning stuff and you stop trying. So you can never be the best because when you do, you ipso facto become not the best because you know you're the best. And that definitely made sense to me. But there is no, well, I guess you could argue that someone is the best strength coach in the world, but just being so excited and wide-eyed and open to such a exciting field for most people, that's why we get into it. And I honestly couldn't tell you too much about, like, the sessions that I coached or the workouts that we did or whatever it was, but I just remember, like, it was great. I just coached, I made some money, and I accumulated experience, and I really enjoyed it a lot. And then we get into year 2, and this is when things become a little bit more calculated, a little bit more specific, start putting dots together about, like, why we do the training that we do, how to sequence stuff together, and just like seeing athletes for longer periods of time and just those things that truly only happen with time and experience. And it was funny. We hired a new staff member, a new coach on board, and my mentor was taking this coach through how to do our initial evaluations and just explaining all the tests, the modified FMS that we do, how to take notes, how to fill out the sheet. And then, of course, I was just listening to keep my skills sharp, and I always like learning new stuff. And I don't remember this conversation too much from when I was a intern, part-time coach, full-time coach. And it got to the end, and they're going through like the normal timeline hour of an evaluation, and my mentor got into the conversation you have after with the parents, how to quote unquote sell, you know, how to guide the conversation, how to guide the topics, how to ask questions at the beginning of the evaluation to where you already know what questions you're going to ask and what you're going to bring up at the end. And if they say that they're worried about certain things at the beginning, well, you'll be conscious of that during the actual eval and to get them on the schedule before they leave and da 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 and all stuff. And I'm just sitting there like, how have I never been told this before? I'm starting 2 years full time, like 3 years altogether, and this is, like, my first time hearing this. And my mentor goes, "That's because up until now, you were just trying to make it through the eval. You were just trying to not implode while evaluating someone and taking them through all of our tests and stuff like that." And it was just so enlightening, like, "Oh, well, there's only certain things that you can handle with the experiences that you have and the knowledge that you have, and the more you accumulate, you never check off a box completely because there's always more levels to a box." And I'm sure once I get better just with this example of the evaluations, well, there's even more layers to it. How to do it more efficiently, how to evaluate 2 kids at the same time. And, with year 2 also, just getting some clarity kind of about what I want out of my career, from my content, my brand, using social media and stuff like that. So year 2 is definitely conscious competence, starting to put some things together, but it was still very, very active. And year 3, let's come back into the current moment. That's kind of the background. Living the same day. So, newsflash, your 20s are not as exciting as one might think or one might guess. As I'm continuing on with my journey as a coach, starting to put stuff together, and also these kind of feelings of imposter syndrome, which I'll talk about later. I remember asking my mentor, like, when did you start feeling like I know what I'm doing? I can get anyone faster. Like I'm a super good speed coach. Not necessarily that he had it all figured out, but like where was it like I have reached competence to where I could basically do anything I want? And I don't remember his specific answer, but it was something like year 5 or 6, or he's like 11 years in. It was somewhere, multiple years beyond kind of where I'm at now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have like 3+ years, 6, 7 years of this feeling of like feeling like I know nothing. Well, that's just fantastic. But the mission now with you know where I'm at currently is to be a knockdown speed coach and to grow my brand and basically just do those two things. Whether it's coaching the facility, whether it's going and speaking, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, my podcast, my YouTube channel, just all of these things relative to me as a professional and getting athletes faster and staying on the field. And I forgot when this hit me because I graduated in May 2020 with my master's during COVID. So COVID was my excuse. I started part-time and I became full-time more by default of not getting a job, even though I applied to like 90 whatever jobs it was. And it hit me like, or COVID was my excuse basically. And once, COVID started becoming less of a thing and the world returned kind of to normal, it hit me. I was like, I I coach 6 days a week, 52 weeks a year. Now, of course, there's holidays and I can take days off, et cetera, et cetera. I have 10 paid days off in my contract. So that's kind of an exaggeration, but so I'm gonna coach 6 days a week for an entire year for the rest of my life. And I was like, "Oh my gosh," like, every year up until then, it was first half of the fall break, second half of the fall winter break, same thing for the spring, and then an entire summer of just different. So just like how monotonous it got, and it is waking up at the same ish time, basically just being an adult, I guess, just in the context of me and my job, waking up same ish time, going to work at the same ish time, coaching similar ish sessions, same age of athletes, same goal. And another question I asked my mentor was like, do you ever get bored or just feel like you're doing the same drills, the same progressions over and over and over? And he goes, well, yeah, because we have a lot of turnover of athletes just being the private side, but like it's just a challenge of how do I get the same results, if not better results, more efficiently? How do I find an even better cue? How do I make this click for this kid even quicker than the previous kids, et cetera, et cetera? But basically just like it's just monotonous. I don't really know how else to describe it, but just the monotony of like being an adult, full-time adulting, very monotonous. And basically it just turned into like, well, how do I not do that? How do I not coach 6 days a week for the rest of my life? Like, yeah, my job's great. My high school was like in college, he was like, oh my gosh, you do this for a living? Like this is your office, this is your 10,000 square foot playground of 1080s and turf and weights and med balls and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, it's great now, but like would I want to be doing this when I'm 65? Would I want to be doing this when I'm 50, 40, 30? I was like, well, I sure hope not. Now, although what I would be doing otherwise might not be as clear, well, how do I use this now to not be doing this later? So that is kind of where I'm currently at. And this roller coaster, I guess the bread and butter, just trying to make this as like candid as possible is why I think the roller coaster happens. And I guess it's a good visual representation of like starting to accumulate some success, right? I've been putting dots together for 3 years. I've gotten some clarity about what I want for myself as a professional, my content, my brand, and accumulating some success. I'm almost up to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube at this point in time. I've been flown across the country as a freelance videographer. I have like 4K on Insta. What do I have? Almost 13 on Twitter, 32K on TikTok, over 10K on my podcast. And this isn't me humble bragging. I know that this is like probably better than the average person just because I put a crap ton of time into it, but, hearing from other people, "Oh, that's so cool. Oh, you're doing great," or, an example that I've shared on my podcast, a job I didn't get, it was between me and another coach that had, like, 16 years of experience, and my mentor put it really well, and he said, "You just leapfrogged 14 years in your career. It was between you with 2 full-time years and this other guy with 16." And that's important, that's success, that's impactful to, like, realize that because of my brand and my coaching and trying to make it happen and thinking beyond and bigger has, like, led me to be in that conversation. So it's like accumulating success, basically just accumulating actions with some direction, I guess, and I guess what success is like focused effort and action. I'm starting to feel like, okay, like I am becoming a better speed coach. I can get kids faster. People are liking what I'm saying and they're getting some value out of it. But then but then a bad session happens. Or something that I thought I knew, I come to realize that it's actually the exact opposite. And it's funny how, getting reminded that I just know the tip of the iceberg. That follows a good session or a good day of coaching. We've all had that good day of coaching where you're buzzing after, everything was just flowing, it could have been 6 hours straight, but it felt like 2. The all the athletes were listening and your cues were on fire and people were running well and sprinting well and all this stuff. And it's funny, it's kind of the point where, like, let's say that happens on, like, a Monday or a Tuesday, like, I know later in the week that I'm gonna have, like, a bad kind of feeling day, or these feelings of, "I don't know what I'm doing," or, "How on earth could I have felt that high or that positive about myself when I don't know nothing now?" And I think that that's a perfect example of this roller coaster of accumulating success, getting some feedback, whether it's numerically with the followers and the listens and whatever, or verbally from mentors, colleagues, athletes, parents. And then, we're living the same day of just coaching, 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 speed, 12 to 18-year-olds, et cetera, and doing all of these things and accumulating these focused actions of brand, speed coach, et cetera, day in, day out. Okay, I'm doing something good. And then a bad session where the kids aren't listening or the athletes aren't listening. Not that they're perfect, but where nothing really flows, or you realize that an athlete you've been training for 4 weeks hasn't really made that much progress, or just wondering like, am I just full of it? Like, do I really know what I'm doing? And it's funny how, like, it's become almost routine now for me to kind of expect that, and that's probably why I've labeled it as, like, a roller coaster, and I brought that up to my colleague because it's become consistent, like, it's happened kinda more than once. And so, I might be a comparer, and I might be impatient for some context. You know, I I'm on Strength Coach Twitter, I consume YouTube videos, et cetera, and, like, we all know who the bigger names in the field are. And as a content creator, not that I see them as my competitors. I mean, I was a college athlete, I hate losing. I have a twin bro that I always beat at everything, if for some reason he listens to this growing up, but it's it's hard to not when, like, I'm literally in the same space. I'm literally creating content that's competing for the same attention and the same followers as they are. Or just like as a speed coach, like more people are doing speed now. Like it's become accepted that speed can be taught, and now we're becoming more methodical. And if you want to say research, or if you want to say super awesome coaches like Altus just making it more available with their courses and whatnot, just as an example, it's become actual speed work, not just conditioning. And being impatient, not necessarily that I feel I'm owed something, but if you think about everything up to this point in time, goals I've wanted to pursue, even the duration of an undergrad or high school is like 4 years, 5 years if you do a 5th year, and let's say, like, making varsity, for example, is like a sophomore in high school. That's probably the first time it really crosses your mind, and that's like a sophomore, junior, senior year thing, or let's say, like, you're dead set, "I wanna graduate with a 4.0 in college." Well, you have that thought as a freshman, and you have 4 or 5 years to do it, just as an example, or, my thesis, that was like a 2-year thing, getting it pu doing it, getting it published, defending, et cetera, and now I have this new goal, and although it's not super concrete, this new goal of becoming a knockdown speed coach, growing my brand that people do for 30 plus years. They start coaching at the same time I do, and up until they're 50, whatever, 60, whatever, even if they're just speaking consulting. So, for the first time, something is taking beyond 4 years. And maybe because I'm in year 3, I'm conditioned to like, oh, this is near the end. And, I should be accomplishing these things now. So being in the same space as all these other big names and people who are way more successful and being a little bit impatient, maybe just because it's how I am, but maybe just because I'm also a little bit conditioned like that as well. It's funny, I was chatting with Coach Mike again as he's stuck with me as my coworker and also roommate. And I realized I only have these feelings or these down days, the bottoms of this proverbial roller coaster on days that I don't have as much to do, whether it's coaching or whatever it may be. And not necessarily that it happens on like weekends or off days, but maybe when I'm in the facility, and although there's always stuff to do and I keep myself relatively busy, I think just being in that space with nothing but my thoughts. Some might consider me an overthinker. Sorry, not sorry, but being a comparer, impatient, an overthinker, I'm sure that's part of it. But I've never I've never had these feelings or the down of this roller coaster on like my crazy busy days. So it was just an interesting kind of realization, or not necessarily a realization, but I'm slowly starting to be able to kind of put my finger on these kind of feelings and emotions, and just to create some context about like why I might be feeling the way that I am. But so, not necessarily that I have it all figured out. Today was a day with less coaching, first day of summer, and I was supposed to have 4 hours, and my first thing of the day got no-showed, and the last thing of the day, I knew no one was signed up, but still, I guess that's considered a no-show. So, that having that another day of the down of this roller coaster inspired me to just hit record. And as I'm getting to the end of the episode with these kind of action steps, not necessarily that I have it all figured out. I think if I had it all figured out and I knew what the answer was, that I would be able to fix it and consequently not feel this way and consequently not have to make this episode. So, I know it's a real topic. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm starting to kind of put my finger on it. And if nothing else comes out of this besides you just saying, "Oh my gosh, this guy's felt the way I felt. I'm not that crazy," then I've done my job. But, you know, just to hopefully give a little bit of potential action items, here are some action steps. So, number 1 is, like, let yourself feel those feelings, and I don't know if this is like a toxic masculinity thing, but I think one thing that I've been better at of recent is, like, I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling like an imposter. I'm feeling like I have no idea what I'm doing, that I've accumulated nothing. I have like no success. Who believes me? I no one should pay me to get them faster. I couldn't get those kids faster. Like, thank God they weren't given to me. It's like a higher level athlete, et cetera, et cetera. And just like being okay with feeling that way, as as kind of weird as that sounds. And not every day is gonna feel like I'm on top of the world, and not every day is gonna feel consciously or unconsciously competent, like I can do all this stuff without even thinking about it. So I think it's okay to let myself and for you to let yourself feel like you don't know what you're doing, because I think it keeps you humble, it keeps you in check, and it keeps you real of like, no, this is still a journey. Like I'm still going. And I don't know why. Like I hate when people speak in cliches. That's just what I decided to say. But basically, it's okay to feel those feelings. Let yourself feel those feelings, because I think the worst thing you can do is be be frustrated and confused and kind of turned into frantic feelings of, why am I feeling this way? I can't feel this way. Like I have to be on top of it all the time, and I'm so successful, and I'm deserved kind of all these things, and turns into maybe even more of an issue, as opposed to just like, oh, I'm feeling this way. I might know why, I might not, but I don't feel this way every day, and it's not that frequent of a thing. So I'm just gonna like let it be. Like today, I had these feelings, as I said, and it was like, well, I just had a not as busy day. That's not the exact reason why or the cause. It's just a symptom, but, at least I can kinda put my finger on it, and it's okay. And I think it's also valuable just to be heard, like whether this is me using my platform as a therapy session, um, or whether it's me being heard slash you feeling heard slash feeling related to, related by, whatever I'm trying to say. I think that that's just valuable. So, like, even me just speaking out loud and into existence, Coach Mike, it's crazy how monotonous every day is, yet how roller coaster-y the emotions are of something that, on paper would seem so simple and routine. And, it was a brief conversation, but I think just to put it out there and, like, be reminded that I'm not totally crazy for different reasons, but and then next is, like, whenever something happens like this, when doubt creeps in or whatever we wanna call it, is, like, I can't complain without offering a solution, or I can't complain without doing something about it, because that just makes me a bad word, right? So, I always ask myself, like, "Okay, then what are you gonna do? What am I gonna do? Not make content? What am I gonna do? Just stay the same level of speed coach forever? What am I gonna do? Like, not make a TikTok again, not make a podcast again, like, not make a YouTube video again?" Like, that would be odd, like, that would be worse than the feelings that I'm feeling right now. So, turning it into action items, it's like, well, I'm not gonna not keep going, so then what am I going to do? And Steve had a good quote, and this is probably when I asked him about when he started feeling like a good speed coach, and he probably referenced this as well when he became the director of coaching, but he felt not fit to lead other coaches and really have that role. He said, "Well, it's only imposter syndrome if you're not doing anything about it. You're not gonna be super qualified and super ready for these jobs and roles, but if you get that new title, if you get that promotion, whatever, and you don't do anything about it, well, that's you're being an imposter." So, as long as you're, like, taking action, and there's some focused effort and there's some direction, and it's funny, like, if some stranger reached out to me on Insta and DM'd me their situation, but it was really my situation, I would give them phenomenal advice, knockdown advice, obviously. And my advice would be like, give yourself some grace. Like, everyone deserves grace, and there's so much pressure, and I'm a comparer, and I'm impatient, and I want all these big things. But it's like, homie, I've done a lot of stuff. I can always do more, but like, give yourself some grace and say, like, "Okay, I'm feeling this way, but, it's okay for right now," or whatever it may be. As long as you're doing something, maybe you do need to step away. Maybe, you know, continuing to move in the right direction is going from 5th gear down to 2nd gear. That's still forwards and still progress, and, of course, if I received that advice, I would totally roll my eyes, admittedly, but, to kinda wrap this up, I think it's a weird combination of big picture urgency and patience. So you have to have a big picture because if there's no grand plan, if there's nothing bigger than yourself and beyond that you're striving for, something that's bigger than what you are right now that requires a new version of you, well, then like why do you get out of bed? To be honest, like I don't know if it's just the field that we're in that's dealing with athletes and sports and it's not a traditional 9 to 5 corporate businessy job. But, like, how could you not have, like, a bigger picture? But next, you need some urgency to, like, actually make it happen. If I say I wanna monetize my YouTube channel, well, what's making me post a video today? What's making me hit record today? What's making me plan a video to shoot tomorrow? Well, it's the urgency. If I wanna do it by the end of 2022, I want to be making money on YouTube in 12 months. I told myself this in the beginning of the year in January. So there has to be some urgency, and urgency is just a fancy way to disguise impatience because that's what drives action. If I didn't have an arbitrary deadline or timeline that I made for myself, well, I'll just make the video next week, or I'll just make a list of videos to shoot whenever. But then consequently, it's also patience. As I said, I'm impatient, and hence why I'm feeling this way, and hence why I'm making this video, obviously. But the patience to and all right, let me take a step back. This last point, combination of big picture urgency and patience is 100% just because this has been beaten into my head by my mentor, consequently by me just bringing the same topics to him over and over and over again. So I'm sure he's tired of me just not accepting that I'm doing well, that I have the big picture and I have the urgency. I'm just missing kind of the patience, but patience to say like I'm making progress, even if it's not as fast as I want it to be, and patience that certain things that I want happening just don't happen to 25-year-olds. At the time of recording, I'll turn 26 in like less than 2 months. And I've even admitted this out loud, like how many 25, 26-year-old coaches, people, 3 years into their journey, am I consuming as like someone who makes really good stuff or someone that I really have to consume that like they provide so much value to me. All the people that I reference, like Eric Cressy, Mike Israetel, just the first two people I kind of thought of, like those guys are like adults. Like I still feel like a kid. Like I was in college literally 2 years ago, May 2022. It's June 2020 or May 2020. It's June 2022. So 25 months ago. So giving myself some grace, keeping that perspective of like, well, am I not going to do anything? But also like, where are other people kind of my experience, not necessarily age, but experience level. So just trying to put those three things together and figure out how that perspective helps kind of not take away the roller coaster of emotions. Like I said, it's okay to feel like that, but I feel like, and I always say to my athletes, I guess I'll bring this together with a speed training story slash analogy is when an athlete finishes a sprint and they go, "Oh my gosh, that was so bad." I'm like, Correct, but why?" Half the problem is knowing that it's a problem. Half the issue of or half the problem of getting faster or the process of getting faster is knowing what feels wrong and knowing what is slow and knowing what's not correct and being able to say, "Oh, I wasn't tall enough. Oh, my toes were down. Oh, I," whatever it might have been. And the other half is figuring out kinda how to actually fix it. But when an athlete goes, "Oh, that was slow," and I'm like, "Why?" Like, "I don't know, it just felt slow." I don't know, the time was slow." It's like, well, that's not helping us get anywhere. Now, of course, I probably know why. That's kind of why I get paid every day. As I just admitted, I know stuff about speed training, I guess, but it's being able to say, "I know why, but here's the potential solution." So letting yourself feel those things and, keep that big picture in mind because that's going to keep in check, well, what am I gonna do? Well, I'm not gonna not pursue this big picture, and, well, I'm not gonna let off the gas completely. You can drop down gears, that's okay, but, if there's no urgency, then you're not gonna get anything done. But then there's the patience of, "I'm doing well, I'm feeling this way. It's okay that today's not an amazing day, a perfect day, whatever it may be." So hopefully that made sense. Hopefully I provided some clarity, some value. You were able to put, a finger on some of these things that you've been feeling. And I believe in you. You got this.